when you're sleeping and your pad starts to deflate and you're blowing it up again and you can just tell that it's starting to go, and I'm thinking, gosh, I should go put this thing in the creek, but it's all but frozen over and I'm already freezing my butt off. And at that point, I didn't really have the greatest sleeping bag. So we're sleeping on this snow basically. So we've got Tyvek down over the snow, and I'm keep sinking down through my pad and hitting the snow. And a lot of people don't realize, they think you need a warm sleeping bag, but the pad when you're snow camping is far more important. So you need a pad with an R value, an insulation value of, I think, at least 6. If you have anything lower than that, you're going to lose so much heat through the ground, kind of conductive cooling. That's really what's going to suck the life out of you. If you got a good pad, you don't even really need a super warm sleeping bag to survive in really cold temperatures. But
what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and today we have an amazing guest, Tristan Richter, #1 employee from Montana Knife Company. He was employee #1, has sharpened thousands and thousands and thousands of knives, knows the business, absolutely loves working at MKC. You're going to love this conversation. Tristan loves getting out, getting after it, backpack hunts, rifle hunting, archery hunting, everything in between. You guys are going to love this conversation. Before we get into the conversation, though, I do want to remind you, today and tomorrow, if you're listening to this on Saturday, today and tomorrow, the last 2 days, to get entered in to win over $5,000 worth of hunt gear. Everything from a bow with extra strings, a backpack, and tons of more gear. Guys, go check it out. The link is down below. Make sure you get entered. Do everything that you can to get as many entries as possible, because this is my biggest giveaway to date. I'm super stoked to be giving back to you guys just before the hunt starts. And if you're out this weekend, as I will be with my son, make sure you guys have success. Whatever success is defined for you, hopefully you're able to punch the tag, get the deer that you're after, or the elk, or whatever it may be. Good luck out there, guys. I want your success. Now, let's get into the conversation with Tristan Richter and Montana Knife Company. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and I've got an amazing guest for you guys. We've got employee number 001. Hopefully there's going to be more than that at MKC, more than 3 digits, right, eventually. But we've got Tristan Richter. Tristan is someone who, ever since high school, has worked at MKC. Absolutely loves what he does. He's passionate about the outdoors. If you've gotten your knives sharpened, especially some of those original ones from MKC, it was probably done by Tristan. He's definitely one of those guys that gets his hands dirty, loves getting in there and making sure that you guys are taken care of. And he's worked his way through different roles in the company. And I joke with him and say that one day he's going to end up being the CEO with how much he's learned there. But with that being said, for people that don't know who you are, Tristan, who are you?
Yeah, like you said, my name's Tristan Richter. I work here at MKC. My current role is an operations manager. So my main day-to-day is managing people here on the floor and kind of running production with Melissa, who you probably met. And yeah, past that, I grew up in Missoula, Montana. I've lived here most of my life, on and off a little bit, moved some other places briefly, but this is where I've called home for most of my life, and I absolutely love it here and just getting out and enjoying the outdoors. And MKC is just an awesome place to work for that, being surrounded by people that push you and love all the same things. And it's just a great place to be. So.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, so, it's Tristan's a really young guy. I mean, other than his, his facial hair, he probably looks like, I don't know, you look super young. How old are you, Tristan? You're early 20s, right?
Yeah, I'm 21.
Yeah. Okay. So, But since high school, I was correct in that, right? That since high school, you've worked at MKC. Tell us kind of why did you go that route rather than the traditional, go to school, get into, not know what you want, get into some debt before figuring out what degree you want and kind of going down that path. Why did you choose to go and work at MKC, which at the time was a brand new company? You kind of rolled the dice, hoped it was going to grow, probably didn't expect it to grow the way that it has. And just kind of talk to us through why you chose that route.
Yeah, I did. And when you say roll the dice, that's definitely what I did. Much to the dismay of some other people in my life, but it has worked out so far, and it's sort of an interesting story. I hadn't actually planned on really staying, so I was, all ready to go to school over in Bozeman for actually business management is what I was going to go for, and business marketing. And I was really just looking for a summer internship or job or something because I had decided to take a gap year, which I don't always think is the best move for kids going to college. I mean, if you've got plans to travel or whatever, great. If you're actually going to go do something, but what happens to a lot of people is they end up getting a job that they don't actually want and getting settled in, and then never going back to school. So I didn't really want to do that, but the year that I graduated high school, 2021, was the kind of the height of the whole COVID thing. So college looked a lot different for us than it typically would. So it was going to be all on Zoom. We were still going to have to live in the dorm, do classes online from the dorm, which was already, not something that I was super excited about going and doing, just because, I'm not the hugest party animal at that point. So that just didn't really sound like the experience I wanted to have, and I'd rather go do my own thing with like-minded people until that all settled out. So I was actually on spring break in my senior year in the springtime, right before I graduated. I think it was probably, I want to say May of 2021. And I had seen MKC start to pop up a little bit on Instagram. I think it was just Brandon starting to make posts initially. It sort of showed up in my For You page, and I hit him up just asking if I could come out or if they did classes or internships or anything. I just thought it was cool and I wanted to come out and see it. And Brandon asked me if I had seen their job listing, and I said no, but he said, yeah, come out, check it out, and if you want to interview for it, go ahead. And I did that day and took a job and worked half days the last couple months of high school, because at that point we were on sort of a block schedule. So I'd roll out here, drive out 30 minutes from the high school, and work from 1 till 5 or 6 or 7, and then go home. And once the summer kicked in, I started working full time, and the rest is history. But I did really take Josh's word and trust him pretty heavily on what he said he was going to do. And so far he's accomplished much more than what he initially promised. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's something that it really is, people don't understand. And as a young, that's a good time to roll the dice per se on your future, is when you're younger. Now, when I say roll the dice, I don't mean go to Vegas and drop, $100,000 and that kind of rolling the dice. I mean, taking a chance on a company like MKC that was brand new and something that was local, and you didn't know exactly, and you kind of had this idea of, well, I've got other plans possibly that I could go back to. It's okay if I go out and do this. Were you a knife guy before MKC?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I definitely I was nowhere near the level of Josh or any of these other guys that know what they're actually doing, but I had, since I was about 12, been hammering on steel and doing more like blacksmithing, more than knife making actually. But I had made a bunch of knives. I'd sold some knives. I like to make them for myself and give them to my friends. And I was working with pretty primitive tools, so the stuff I was making was not the prettiest, although it's gotten better now. But yeah, it was definitely something I was really into, as well as, all the hunting and bushcrafting and doing all that kind of fun stuff. So that's why the knife company kind of drew my attention. But past liking knives, the reason I decided to stay was really because of the people, not even remotely. I mean, we could have been making anything, paper clips, but if it was this crew here, I probably would have stayed. So
I love it. No, that's awesome. And that's good for people to know too, because there's something to be said about culture in a company and keeping people around. And I can't remember what it was, either the average age of the employee at MKC or something, but like Josh was saying that most people were about half his age or less,
and
working at MKC.
you may not be able to tell because of the gray hair, but Josh ain't too old himself. So
Yeah.
that is very true. It's a very young company. I don't know exactly what our average age is, but I mean, Josh is barely over 40. Andrew and Brandon are late 30s, and the rest of us are, I would say the vast majority of us are in our 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of fun to be around, lots of energy, very, very high spirits and fun to be around, lots of motivation.
That's awesome. And I love it too. There was something that I saw the other day that got sent back to, it was to Braden. There was a knife that someone sent back to Braden saying that so and so was a better shot than him, inscribed on the knife or written on the knife, and just taking things like that in good jest and in good humor. I think what was it? Josh opened up a box of someone sending back some resharpening knives, and it had like a half-used roll of toilet paper and some other stuff that people use to like kind of package it to keep it from rolling around too much in the box.
Oh yeah, the stuff I see is hilarious. I open all those packages because I still do the vast majority of the generations sharpening and cleaning and all that fun stuff. Just because I honestly like to do it. It's fun for me to still get my hands on knives that way. And I'm starting to train a couple other people to dip their toes into it, but those ones we really like to take seriously because a lot of times it's someone that's already sharpened their knife a bunch, and I want them to get it right the first time without taking too much material off or do a really good job on the tie. But yeah, those ones are funny. That guy also left Braden a little note on the knife that said that he didn't lift, and Braden sent it back with rainbow paracord on it.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool.
We take
I love
ourselves
that. So,
seriously, but not too seriously.
yeah, like I mean, yeah, no, that's you put quality where it needs to be, but also there's some humor in it, and there's some jest and back and forth. I love that. That's awesome. And it's funny because First Phorm is another company. So for people that don't know, MKC is a partner of the show at this point, and First Phorm is also, I've been working with First Phorm since 2020, and their average age of employee is very similar. It's a super young crowd, very high energy, always pushing themselves to be better. And I could see the MKC crowd, if MKC was no more, being able to just meld into that First Phorm culture just as well. And there's something about that culture. It's not even necessarily about the age group, but it's people like Josh and at First Phorm, Andy Frisella and Sal Frisella. And MKC, we've got Josh, you've got Andrew, you've got Brandon, you've got Josh's wife. All the people there are encouraging these young kids to go down this better path than just going the traditional route of going into debt in school, not knowing what you want. Now, I'm not saying don't go to school. I encourage my kids to go to school too, if you know what you need and your career requires a degree. If your career does not require a degree, there's a lot of stuff that you can learn through, like Tristan here, going and learning business management in person and not wasting that time necessarily at school. And so, those things are huge. And so it's a big shout out to that culture there at MKC. It's pretty awesome. And just the exponential growth as well. It's not for show. It's not the big hat, no cattle mentality. Like Josh has the cattle and the hat. Like, it's both. And that's something that's a big deal up there. So before we get too far into MKC, I want to talk a little bit more about kind of your journey. And when I asked you about being a knife guy, there's a lot of people, and I'm one of those people too, that I had a bunch of knives, but I never really delved into making knives. And so when I said knife guy, that's kind of more of what I meant, more of a collector, but you took it a whole nother level, and you were starting to make and blacksmith things at a young age with even crude materials and tools. So you kind of built that up throughout your years in high school. And then you mentioned bushcraft and getting outdoors. I think there's a story that I'd like you to share here as well, where you went out and you had a crazy experience out in the mountains while you were out hunting. If you want to share that experience.
Which one? I mean, I have
okay, well, share one of them then. Any of them. Well, your favorite experience out where you had the crappy. It was something you had, like some survival experience basically, where you went up there and everything went to crap.
Yeah. So I had one. I think it was 2 seasons ago. We have this backcountry area that we'll go hunt a little bit just west of here, and we knew that there was a lot of big deer in there, and we'd picked up a bunch of huge sheds, and there was all these, mountain whitetails hanging out at 7,000 feet. We originally found them trying to look for mule deer sheds in a spot that you'd normally find those, but started picking up these huge old whitetail sheds and realized that there were some pretty big deer in there. So we decided to take a 3-day weekend and go backpack in there, and it's just a long, it's probably 6 miles in, and we went in, I think it was last week of season. It was real late, and we'd already filled most of our other tags, so we were just in there looking around for a deer, and we get into this bottom, and we probably left our house at it had to be 10 at night, and drove an hour and a half out there and started hiking at 11:30 or 12, and got way in there at 2 or 3 in the morning and set up our tent, and it's freezing cold, like probably 10 Fahrenheit. And we got a seek outside teepee stove, which ended up ultimately kind of saving our butts. But I realized pretty quickly once we got set up in there that my inflatable pad had popped. It had a little tiny hole in it, and I patched that thing I don't know how many times, and it was just kind of at the end of its life. So when you're sleeping and your pad starts to deflate and you're blowing it up again, and you can just tell that it's starting to go, and I'm thinking, gosh, I should go put this thing in the creek, but it's all but frozen over and I'm already freezing my butt off. And at that point, I didn't really have the greatest sleeping bag. So we're sleeping on this snow basically. So we've got Tyvek down over the snow, and I'm keep sinking down through my pad and hitting the snow, and a lot of people don't realize, they think you need a warm sleeping bag, but the pad when you're snow camping is far more important. So you need a pad with an R value, an insulation value of, I think, at least 6. So if you have anything lower than that, you're going to lose so much heat through the ground. That kind of conductive cooling, that's really what's going to suck the life out of you. If you got a good pad, you don't even really need a super warm sleeping bag to survive in really cold temperatures. But
then, just kind of hitting on that, like with the part of your body that's laying on the ground is going to squish that, whether it's down or synthetic material, whatever, you're squishing that down, which then you're also losing the insulation on that side. So it might be rated for 20 degrees, 0 degrees, 15 degrees, whatever, but the side that you're squishing with your body weight is not going to be as insulated as the side that's above you holding in that heat. So yeah, losing that that temperature through the ground is pretty rough.
Yeah, whether it's down or synthetic or whatever you have, all of those things, just like a puffy jacket, require lofting space to operate correctly. So they work by trapping air, and it needs that air pocket to do that. So when you squish that down and you're laying on a compacted layer of tiny little pathetic goose down feathers, and then you've got basically a tarp between you and the snow, you lose heat very, very quickly. So I ended up spending the entire night feeding twigs into this tiny little seek outside titanium stove. It's really just nice for like drying your boots out and getting you out of the sleeping bag in the morning. But those things really
I bet your buddies appreciated it though, because you kept the tent nice and warm for them.
Oh yeah, no, my buddy was toasting all night long. He slept like a baby, and I did not sleep a wink that whole night. So fast forward to the next morning, I'm having a rough time because I hiked in all night and then spent the night feeding sticks to a fire trying to stay warm, and then now we got to get up and hunt. So we get up before light and hike way up this ridge and end up watching a bunch of big bull elk and stuff, and aren't seeing too many deer. And right at very last light, I spotted a buck kind of walking up the bottom on the opposite side of the ridge, and this thing is real steep and rocky and dry, and it's real hard to cross. So we didn't even have time to get around to the elk because they were just moving. But this deer was in our range, so initially it looked like a bit of a better buck than it was. It had a real long main beam and super heavy, but it was just like a 4x4. It was a decent deer, but probably nothing I would have shot that far back had I known a little bit better. But I ended up taking this crazy shot that was I think it was like 480 and real steep downhill. It was a good thing we had a level on the rifle, because otherwise there's no way I would have, hit left or right. But
Mm-hmm.
we had the gun pretty well set up and we'd been practicing a lot, so I decided to take the shot. Dumped it, first shot through both lungs, and it rolls way down off this cliff and the snow down to the bottom of the creek. So we go get it, and by that time it's dark, and we're sitting there cutting this thing up, just freezing our butts off. And this is another 3 miles past our camp, so now we're 9 miles in, and I'm still, running on empty and super cold and tired. And it's one of those where we like to call it extreme type 2 fun, where you're out there for the love of the game, but you're just barely hanging on. So at this point, I'm ready to go back and eat a hot mountain house and get back to the tent. But the stretch of creek bottom that we had to take this thing back to our tent, which was in the bottom, it was all kind of like flooded beaver dams. So it was like 2.5 foot deep, muddy, crusty water that was all sort of frozen on the top and still kind of mushy under the bottom. And it wasn't getting us wet necessarily, but it was just the most taxing thing ever to walk through. Super similar to like if you ever walked around in Alaska in the tundra, or in any other super swampy, muddy creek bottom. You know how you're getting zero efficiency out of the ground, and especially when you get a super heavy pack on. We got half a deer each and a bunch of backpacking gear, and we're just slogging through this stuff one step at a time, and legs cramping, super dehydrated, hard to get water, and we're just battling through these super thick alders and nastiness. And it was super short as the crow flies, but just some of the nastiest, thickest, swampiest stuff I've ever had to walk through. So by the time we get back to the tent, we're just toast. And then I'm faced with the exact same issue that I had the night before, where my pad still does not work, but there's no way that we're going to hike out just because we had such a long day of cruising around in the mountains. So at that point, we hang the deer in a tree and light a big fire and warm up. And then eventually it's time to crawl back in the tent again. And that night I can pretty much put my finger on, except for one other time, which was a similar situation. That was definitely the coldest night that I can remember within my recent memory. I've had a lot of cold nights in the mountains just because I've snow camped a lot and done the late rifle thing for mule deer quite a bit. And we get pretty Spartan with what we bring, and this time had nothing to do with being unprepared. It was just an unfortunate circumstance we had. And I think that's something for people to be aware of. If you've got an inflatable pad, bank on the fact that that thing could pop and have patch kits. And in this case, the valve was broken. So learned a valuable lesson.
You could do.
Kind of test my stuff every once in a while and replace the pad more often than anything else, because you end up, we use the crap out of those things and eventually they just wear out. But,
so do you think it would have helped? Because I know some people, and I don't do a lot of snow camping yet. I haven't gotten into that late season rifle very often, but something that just crosses my mind is maybe in the late season, even having, if you have a lesser R value pad, because it's lighter weight, it's greater for more of the, September, August, maybe even October time, getting a solid foam pad to go up underneath it. And kind of doubling up, and maybe you carry the extra weight, it's a couple extra ounces, but getting just one of those basic thermarest kind of where it folds up like a zigzag and straps to the bottom of your pack, having that as a second layer just as a backup.
That's absolutely a great idea. And it's also a good idea to have one of those if you're going to be, in a floorless tent. You definitely want to have something, whether it's a sheet of Tyvek, which is what I use to protect the bottom of my pad. It's nice because you don't melt into the snow, but you need something underneath your pad if you have a floorless tent to protect your pad from little sticks poking up through the snow or rocks or anything, because those things are so lightweight now that you touch that thing wrong with a rock and it's done for. So you really got to make sure you're protected from the ground. But you're right, that is a great option just as a backup. And it might have helped a bit, but the big air pads really are what keep you super, super warm. And, I probably would have been much better off had I had something like that. But what I had was a little, foam sit pad. So I put that underneath my hip and I had a puffy jacket under my head, but there was so much snow on the ground that it was just really hard to escape that freezing. It 1 second my hips warm, but then my feet and my legs are freezing, or my ribs are freezing where they're touching, and it was just a bad situation. And at that point, we're dehydrated and not thinking straight. My buddy's fine this whole time, but I just lived that night out in absolute misery, didn't sleep a wink, so I ended up going the whole 3 days just not sleeping at all. And that last pack out back to the truck was pretty short. For us, like, we do a lot of mileage and hike around in the mountains all the time, so packing half of a whitetail 6 miles is not generally the most difficult of tasks for us, but under the circumstances, that starts to get a lot more difficult exponentially as you don't sleep one night and then don't sleep another night. And the rest component is extremely important, just staying hydrated and getting good sleep. I'm far less Spartan with my sleeping setup than I used to be because of that experience, because I really realized how important and what a big effect that can have on your experience if you're going out for any extended period of time. Even though 3 days isn't really that long of a trip to be backpacked in for some people, it's still more than enough time where if something goes wrong on the first night or you don't sleep well, your brain can start to go to wanting to leave really, really easily, unless you're really, really in love with it like we are. So just making sure that you're comfortable and taken care of first before your ideas of going in far, that'll allow you to stay a lot longer and be more comfortable. But man, that was a horrible experience. I'm really, really happy though that we had that teepee tent, because had we not had a stove that I could just sit up all night and feed, I would have been in really bad shape.
Oh yeah. No, I can imagine. And just a couple things, and I know most people listen to the podcast already understand this, but when your sleeping bag's rated for a certain degree, that's like what you can survive in, not necessarily that you're comfortable, in those temperatures. Yeah. And they also, they make bag liners if you're up for that. I know Sea to Summit makes a good bag liner that supposedly adds 10 to 15 degrees to that sleeping bag. And, just again, that extra foam pad, having redundancies. My problem is, and it sounds like you and I are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. I pack too much, and usually my friends appreciate that because I'm usually the one with the good snacks and the good tools and all this stuff that I've got available. But then I get back and I unpack and I realize I haven't used half my crap, usually clothes, but stuff like that. And so this is coming from Tristan, who's been out there. Again, this area really well. You've been going there since high school, and you backpack in with your friends consistently. That's the other thing too that I think goes very underrated. Other than your gear, obviously testing your gear, you're in charge of that. Your hunting buddies, that can be a big thing too. Because I bet if they had a terrible attitude about, well, we thought that buck was bigger, and I can't believe you make us pack this out, and blah blah blah. Like all of those things, that the little mumblings can also get under your skin. That can cause a bad situation as well to be worse. All of those things. You obviously knew these guys for a while, and had a good time, as well as much as you could with the poor situation with the sleeping. But all of those things kind of come into play, and it really is cool to know that people like yourself do genuinely get out and enjoy that, and especially being so young, being 21. I mean, not a lot of 21-year-olds, especially nowadays, they want to post about it, tweet about it, or X about it. I don't know what that's called now, but all of those things, and you're just like, I'm just going to go out and do it because I genuinely love it. I'm not looking for any clout. I'm not looking for any of that. I just enjoy getting outside. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, there's so much truth to that, picking your hunting partners. It's one thing to go out for the day with some buddies that are in town, but the people that I go out with, it's an extremely tight, small circle. I mean, I can count on one hand the amount of people that I hunt with. And out of those 4 or 5 people, really just the one, he and I are on the same page about pretty much everything. We use all the same gear and have been doing it together for almost 6 or 7 years now. And we know that we can rely on each other when stuff gets tough like that. We both are pretty committed to having good attitudes, no matter how shitty the weather gets or how deep we are in or how tired our legs are. We're gonna keep pushing, and also know that we're comfortable with each other enough that, you know, if one of us does need to get out of there or leave or need some help, that we can ask for that. We're not like peer pressuring each other into doing stuff we can't handle, but we do know that both of us can push the limits with each other and not be worried that one of us isn't going to be able to hang. So that's a really great relationship to have as far as a hunting partner, and just knowing that, you know, they got your back and they're not going to hold you back, but they're also going to push you. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Outside of who you pick to get married to, I would say a hunting partner is pretty much up there on the list, because you're going to put yourself in those crazy situations, unless you're one of those guys that, you know, brings more beer than you do water and all that, and hangs out at a wall tent. And, you know, if that's your situation, cool. I'm not really talking to you necessarily, but the people that go and hike in, backpack in, or even if you go solo and you know you can call them up and they may not be able to drop their job at that moment, but the moment they're off the clock, they're up the mountain helping you pack stuff out or clean or whatever it is. You know, I'm extremely blessed to have a couple of guys like that as well. And I think there's a lot of, I know for a fact I wouldn't be into hunting and definitely not archery and the things that I am if it wasn't for them. You know, kind of pushing me and showing me some of the ropes. And unfortunately, I there's a story I've heard recently where there were these two guys that they were hiking buddies, but they go out and they ended up getting lost, and ended up that one of the guys, like, one of the guys could no longer walk. He cramped up so bad and was so dehydrated that he was basically on the brink of death, couldn't leave. They were out in the middle of the desert. The other guy, you know, not knowing all the circumstances, I feel like could have been better at reading a map or something like that. You know, you've got to be able to kind of audit your partner, and they have to be able to audit you, and you guys need to be able to complement each other, because if you do break a leg, maybe you can't get him out, but he can trust that you will set him up in a good spot, and you run out to go get help and come back. He's not going to sit there wondering, is Tristan going to come back for me? You know, or vice versa. I'm going to wonder if he's coming back for me or not.
also,
all
just
of those
know
things.
how to read the signs of your hunting partner too. Like know when they're dehydrated, know when they need to stop and need a snack, know what their limits are. I mean, for example, I had another super cold night on opening day. It was October 16th or something here, and it snowed a foot overnight and then dropped to almost -20. And that was another night where we were out bivvy camping, and I actually became hypothermic there too. And he knew me well enough to know that what I was talking about didn't quite sound right, and he made me get up and walk around and put a hot water bottle in my sleeping bag, and I was fine. But had he not known that, it could have also been bad. And that was when we were probably 17. So at this point, we're a lot more dialed in. I mean, I can't think of the last time past the story I just told you where I was uncomfortable in the snow or ill prepared. But some of those things you just kind of have to work through and learn through, and push it a little bit and have a close call and learn from it, hopefully. But knowing what your hunting partner's limits are and how to support them, and then also going back to the people you pick too. It's like I saw a thing recently that was like there's 6 p.m. friends, and then there's 3 a.m. friends, and you could have a bunch of people you can call, and until 6 o'clock they'll pick up the phone and give you a call back, and then past 6 they're all of a sudden unavailable. But there's a whole other group of people you have, hopefully, that's probably a lot slower, or excuse me, not slower, smaller, where, you know, you call them at 3 a.m. they're picking up the phone and putting their pants on before they even hear what you're saying. So
Exactly.
Those are the people that I like to pick to go hunting, because even if I am by myself, you know, my hunting partner and I have an understanding that, you know, one of us shoots something by ourselves in the snow, one of us will get up in the middle of the night and drive halfway across the state and help them pack it out. So that's a really cool thing to have, and something that people shouldn't take for granted if they have it. So
Brief interruption, guys. Want to remind you about the $5,000 hunt gear package giveaway. The link is down below. Make sure you get entered into that package giveaway. It's the biggest one to date. Everyone from Leupold to Initial Ascent to Muley Freak to PSE Bow is all included and more. An all-in setup system and so much more. Go check it out, guys. The link is down below. Make sure you get entered. Also, thanks to the sponsor, partner of this show, Phorm and Phorm Outdoors. Guys, go and check that out. That is also a way to get some bonus entries. Every dollar spent on the Phorm website, between supplements to gear and apparel and whatever else, send me a screenshot in the email of your purchase and I'll get your entries for that $5,000 hunt gear package giveaway. The first entry is free, so go check it out. But give a shout out to Phorm, guys. Go check out the supplements. If you have any questions of what you may be looking for, send me a message. More than happy to answer it. But if you already know what you like, whether that be protein, pre-workout, creatine, hydration sticks for while you're up on the mountain, meat sticks for while you're up there as well, for snacks that aren't going to melt on you when you're up there hunting during the warmer months, definitely go check it out. Now let's get back to the conversation with Tristan and MKC.
Oh yeah, no, I love it. And I've had a couple of those. They weren't in the middle of the night, but first thing in the morning on a Sunday. I'm sitting there in bed, and I got a call. I didn't have a tag at the time. My buddy calls me, and I know if he's calling me during hunting season, first thing in the morning, he's got something down. Like either that or he spotted something that he wants me to shoot. And so I answer it. My wife looks at me. She's like, "Who is it?" I was like, "Oh, it's Brent." She's like, "You better go." It's like, all right, like that's just that. It's those are definitely good relationships to have, for sure. When it comes to the hunting situation, and then also, just sharing gear, stuff like that. Like there's people that I would never lend anything to, because I don't know if I'm going to get it back or not. And then there's other people that I'm like, sure, yeah, take this and this and this and this, and I know I'll get it back eventually, kind of deal. So all of that definitely comes into play when it goes into the outdoors and hunting. So with hunting, are you kind of a mixed bag? I don't think I've really talked to you about archery stuff. Are you into archery at all, or is it mainly rifle, or is it a good mix?
Yeah, I definitely enjoy archery more. That's been more of a recent journey for me. So I've shot bows forever. I used to shoot recurves a lot and do the whole trad thing, and mostly just for fun, go out and hunt small game and stuff. And throughout me learning how to hunt, I've hunted since I was probably 12 or 13. But until later in high school, that really consisted of going back out to where my family's from in eastern Montana and shooting a doe during the youth hunt on a ranch of a friend or whatever, and then maybe once in a while you see a nice buck and you shoot it, but not really the like hardcore public land grind that we're into now. And then later on started archery hunting a little bit, probably having a similar experience to most people, mixed bag, some success, some heartbreaking failure, which drives me a little bit harder personally, but I've definitely had quite a bit of that. Some misses, some less than ideal shots, and then as I've started to learn just generally how to hunt better, I've started to have more and more success with that. So for me, the actual finding of the animals during archery season has never been difficult. It's the how to close that final distance, how to execute a shot on something that's alive, and then really just realizing how important practicing shooting is, and how few people actually do that. I think that the statistics, at least here, for successful archery elk harvest is like 1 in 10. So every 10 years someone kills an elk, or 10% of the population kills them all the time. It's a very small number of people that are actually successful. And as I've started to be around the hunting community more in the hunting industry, I realize how few people actually really practice consistently and with a lot of intention. And I think that's super important. Even rolling up to tack, like I feel like I could be shooting more all the time, both rifles and bows. I never feel like I'm good enough, and I always have anxiety about it. But then you roll up and, you know, you go shoot with people at TAC, and sometimes, you know, it's kind of surprising how many hunters are like sort of all over the map. And I get that TAC is not necessarily the best representation of real hunting shots, but, you know, people roll up with, you know, 3 arrows with a couple fletchings on them and be like, yeah, I just screw broadheads onto them and go. And, I think that is the main reason why a lot of people, don't have success, and why I didn't have as much early success, because I didn't realize the level that people that are really good at this go to achieve success. Like, you're removing every possible obstacle. So yeah, I'm super into archery now. I shoot almost every single day. I'm shooting a compound now, mostly elk hunt. Our opportunities for like whitetail tree stand hunting here are very small. You can do it, but there's just kind of, quite frankly, from my perspective, like better things to do here. Like, I'd rather go chase mule deer way up in the mountains late season with a rifle than sit in a tree stand with a bow. I just personally, I enjoy actively hunting. It's I have a ton of respect for the whole tree stand whitetail hunting world. I just know nothing about it. I think it's really, really cool, and it takes a lot of work in the same exact way, you know, probably like doing your food plots and, you know, cutting like trails through the bushes and setting up tree stands and cameras and all that stuff is like a whole other ball game that I know nothing about, and it's really cool. But here it's just like, we don't really have the caliber of deer walking around in the bottom, where you can be super successful with that all the time, to the same level that you could go, you know, roll up to some big rocky face in the mountains and there's big old pig mule deer running around up there in general units. So I've tended to kind of steer myself towards that, and most of my early season, September, October is like chasing elk with the bow, which I find really fun. And even if I get something early, like last year, I'll spend the rest of the season just hunting with buddies, just because I like being out there and chasing bugles around.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I would agree. You know, I absolutely love archery hunting. It's here in Utah, you definitely get a lot more opportunity with mule deer and elk. But there are other ways to be more efficient, obviously, than a bow. And whatever gets you outdoors, I'm up for that. And as long as you're being ethical about it. So even if it is a rifle, you know your distance. And I'd say stick within that, even if it is the trophy of a lifetime. You know, like I tell people, and I am this way with my own hunting, is before I head out, I tell myself, you know, what am I comfortable at shooting with my bow or a rifle? What is the furthest that I will go? And I won't go past that. I'll hold myself to that, because if you're not comfortable with it, when your heart is calm, the animal's not in front of you, everything like that, what's going to happen when you're shaking, you're out of breath because you just climbed that mountain, your pin's all over the place, and it's at a distance that might be out of reach for you, even standing on flat ground in your Crocs, you know, with a slow heart rate. You know, that's something that, to me, it's worth respecting the animal more and giving them that opportunity and understanding that that's part of the hunt, than it is to fling an arrow and say that I missed, you know, I got a shot off or whatever.
It is far more heartbreaking to track something a mile and lose blood than to say that you drew the line in the sand. And that's a lesson that, you know, I relearned that lesson continually. This year, a couple weeks ago, I actually had an experience where I had to go back to the drawing board bear hunting, because I've been shooting my rifle a ton and trying to dive more into the rifle world of, you know, not necessarily hunting at long range, but practicing at long range and just getting more comfortable with setting up more difficult shots there. Because a lot of times, you know, where we hunt, you're getting into these cross canyon situations where it's maybe only 300 yards across, but it's a steep angle or something. Or maybe like out west, you do have to poke out 400 yards, and that's actually kind of a long distance for an actual hunting scenario. So I had a situation where, you know, I've been practicing all spring with my rifle, and I'm good out to 650, and I'm hitting an 8-inch gong every single time at 650 yards on relatively flat ground, with, you know, moderate wind, nothing too crazy, but 10-ish miles an hour. And we were out bear hunting a couple weeks ago and spotted a nice bear way up in a burn in the cliffs. And the closest that we could get to this bear and still see it, without getting winded, was like 510 yards on the dot across the canyon, but super steep uphill, like 25-30 degree shot up the hill. So, you know, on flat ground, it's a chip shot for me, right? And I've made long shots on animals before like that and been totally fine. I don't even, like, for me, 500 flat is not even really that crazy of a shot. But all of a sudden, when you add this to it, all kinds of funny things happen to your dope chart. And I'm also 2,000 feet higher, 3,000 feet higher than where I sighted my rifle in, which can actually make quite a significant difference. And then you also have the factor of over there on that burned, kind of charred slope that's been baking in the sun all day, that wind is going up that hill really, really fast. And there's a lot of updraft, and I ended up missing this bear twice. And the first time I thought it was me, I hit high and left because of the wind. And then also when you shoot uphill, your dope chart on your rifle, you know, you start hitting high, right? So you have to dial your turret a little bit less. So I started learning that, just like, you know, what tack is great for archery, you also have to practice with your rifle. And that's something that I'm going to be practicing a lot more. That was kind of my takeaway from bear season this year. Was I went and got a really nice sort of heavy, stable tripod that's a lot more solid than the one I've been shooting off of, or glassing off of. Really, I don't necessarily even use tripods a lot to shoot, but I was trying to stack packs and get solid at this crazy uphill angle. And I sort of had to go back to the drawing board on that and realized this is a really great hunting spot, but if I want to hunt here, I'm going to have to be able to take those really steep shots. And in order to be able to do that, I have to get a tripod and I have to practice that. Just like you're shooting your bow and you're shooting flat on ground out of your garage in your backyard. And when you're actually out in the elk woods, a lot of times it's straight up or straight down, and people don't practice that a lot or get to practice that a lot. So that's why tack's really awesome for archery. But, you know, the same thing applies to the rifle. So just making sure you practice for what you're actually doing.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. I will say, though, you mentioned that tack might not be the best representation of real life. I would almost disagree with that. Now, where they set the targets up, the obstacles and stuff, I would agree. But if you took out, like, I'm not going to shoot beside a tree where the vitals are half covered up by a tree. That I agree with. But as far as the angles and the distances out to 60, 70 yards, like those are shots I would take 100%. And like even this year, you know, and I've told the story a couple of times, but my first bull, this guy hanging up right here, I bumped him. They didn't figure out what I was, and they just kind of walked off. Read the map. This again goes back to understanding how to use your tools, and said if they did stop, they would have stopped here because of XYZ, just knowing a little bit about elk, what they're comfortable with and where the wind was and like all of these things. And I'm no expert by any means, but unpicking from people that I've learned from, it worked out perfectly. I was like, if they stopped, they're going to bed right here. And I was literally coming up on a cliff behind them because they would have bedded against that cliff because that's protection from behind. And then the wind's coming uphill, which obviously is their protection from the front. So nothing was sneaking up on them except for above them. And so my shot, I think line of sight, my rangefinder said it was like 85, 90 yards. But with the cut, it was exactly 70, which is what I said was my limit for shooting an elk with a broadhead. And I mean, it cut 15 yards off. So that was a steep, I want to say it was 20 to 30 degree shot. I mean, I had to hinge so far to get down and then level my bubble and everything to send that shot off. That's definitely a very realistic style shot. And so I challenge people. Yeah,
that's exactly what tack is for. I mean, I was referring more to the 112 yard bedded deep in the rocks or whatever. But those type of shots,
Or
especially
the gummy
that
bear. I hate that little gummy bear. You know, that little tiny. I think that's the most hated target at TAC because it's so narrow because he's standing up and it's so short. It's like a gnome. And they always put that thing at like 70, 80 yards. So like any little twitch or crosswind, you are off the target. Any little up and down twitch, you are off the target. So it's like,
yeah,
those
I
things
do
are
think
ridiculous.
those 3D archery events are the TAC in particular.
Mhm.
Those are just like the best thing you could possibly do for yourself to get ready for bow hunting in the the steep mountains. It just doesn't get better than that. You're not setting those shots up in your backyard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know enough about. I know there's things out there that you can get to with rifles and get used to your rifle setup as well. I would agree. You know, for me, a 500-yard shot, even though I haven't shot at distance in a while, I know I can pick up a rifle and shoot at 500 yards flat. Like that's not terrible. An 8-inch gong is really small. I mean, for people that think about it, that's smaller than a sheet of paper, a sheet of printer paper. You know, so hitting that at 650 consistently, that's impressive. That's definitely a lot smaller than the vitals on most big games. So that's very impressive. You know, and then of course learning your charts and all of that. I mean, that's a whole nother world, it's a whole nother language, and it's good to know that. And to accept the failure that you had and realize like it wasn't necessarily your equipment. That's also a sign, I feel like, of a good hunter. You're not going to blame your equipment because, well, who set up the equipment? You know, even if it is the equipment, who set up the equipment, you know? And so that's awesome that you're able to learn from that experience. And hopefully next time you see a bear, you'll be able to knock one down.
Yeah.
I want to kind of rotate to back to MKC and your experience there, because again, at the beginning, I said employee number 1, you know, number 001, you, if you had a serial number, what's the story behind that? I mean, you really were the first official employee outside of obviously Brandon and Josh, who are the owners. But like, why do you feel like they took a chance on you?
I feel like probably for several different reasons. I mean, I was super enthusiastic about it. And I didn't ask him for a lot right away. I started at a pretty low pay part-time and just stayed consistent. And I really just kept chipping away at the block and showing up in a very consistent way. Like, you know, I've never really tried to be the highest performer in the whole building ever, you know. I try to just give what I think is my best all the time, and sometimes that fluctuates up and down, but as level as I can try to keep that, the better, right? Because it doesn't matter if someone's a superstar one day and a train wreck the next. Unreliability is really hard to deal with from a management standpoint. So just picking a level of effort that you think is sustainable for yourself and just continually putting that forward, and that applies to so many other things. But I think that I sort of understood that and displayed that pretty early on, and I think that they recognized my ability to do that and to be committed. And I also put a lot of trust in Josh, and I think he wanted to reward that a bit. So I appreciate him a lot for that.
No, for sure. And so I was going to make a sarcastic comment, be like, "Oh, you mean you provided value for the company?" But like I talk a lot about that because I've learned that from Andy Frisella specifically. And there's other companies out there as well that if you look at any successful company that has either good outside representation, such as influencers, ambassadors, etc., or internal good culture, it's all based on value exchange. It's not you coming in and saying, you know, this is what I need from you. It's here's what I can provide. I would love this opportunity kind of deal. Even, and you know, I've had Brandon on, but also Andrew. I love Andrew's story, how he kind of interviewed MKC in a way, but it wasn't in a cocky way. It was, this is the value I can provide to you. I want to provide this to this company. I believe in this company. And he wasn't necessarily saying, I need to be XYZ. You need to give me this. It was, this is what I can provide because I want to see these things grow. And it sounds like you were the same way with the skill set and the basically the drive that you had at the time as a 18-year-old. And I mean, that's, again, not very common. A lot of 18-year-olds, I mean, there's a lot of complaining out there. And basically it's become a very soft society in general. And, you know, I do my best as a dad to help my kids as they're getting to through those stages of life, to not expect things, but to realize this is what you can provide. Just explaining that through chores, even like, yeah, I could do the dishes, son. Yes, I could sweep. But this is how you can provide to the family, because I am providing you this kind of deal. And just kind of teaching it at an age level. So it sounds like you're mature beyond your years at 18, and now being at the company for 3 years, a little over 3 years, we've kind of talked through how there's a great culture there. How many employees are there now? I know there's a picture you guys
I want to
post pretty
say
frequently.
just under 60, 56
Okay.
or 57.
Now,
Growing
for
by the
people that
day.
don't understand, I don't know the stats on that, but to grow to 60 employees, and that's not, is that including like the C-suite, like so Josh and Brandon and
Yeah.
all that, or is it, that is okay? So
Yeah. So
going from essentially 3 employees to 60 in 3 years, I mean, that's ridiculous. That's crazy.
it's not
And
normal. Yeah.
yeah,
No.
no, that is not 100% not normal. And I do want to hit on a couple other things too that I haven't personally seen it from my followers that have reached out to me about MKC knives. But I know I have seen it in comments where they're like, well, you guys do the drops and they sell out so fast because you make like 20 knives. First off, I'm going to point out behind Tristan here. And guys, I kind of made the joke of, you know, how Tristan's sitting there. People are going to pause the video and try and zoom in and see any new. These aren't new knives, guys. These are what they make sure you're taken care of. Oh, geez. All right. Well, never. not even just behind him, but like that's their generational promise wall right there behind you. So if you break a knife, if you know, even, please don't do anything stupid with it. I'm not encouraging that, but use your knives. They want you to use your knives. And as they get used, obviously, sometimes the tip might bend, something might chip, something might break. Don't try and use them like pry bar, guys. Like, don't be that guy. But using a knife as a knife is supposed to be used, they will definitely make sure you're taken care of. They want to hear your story on why it needs to be sharpened, why the paracord needs to be retied, why whatever it is. Don't be ashamed to send that back in, and then continue as you hand that down to your kids or to a friend, or you buy gifts for whoever. Let them know about this promise, because not many companies are willing to back up their work the way that MKC does. And on top
I'll
of that,
touch on that a little bit too. I mean, our
Oh, yeah.
customers are great. I get very few broken knives that were broken in a stupid way back.
Yeah.
You get the occasional, oh, I tried to baton my knife through the pelvis of a bear or an elk or whatever, and the edge chipped out, and I need to replace it or whatever. And every once in a while, it's like, write them a note and say, hey, next time use a saw for that, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Buy a hatchet.
I don't care what. There you go. You know, we don't mind doing that. You know, sometimes I'll give them a little follow-up education on what correct knife use is, and, you know, why we make our edges thin and all that stuff. I could go on about that stuff forever, but this wall behind us really is one of the most important parts of our company to us, and also why we've had so much success. You know, being able to stand behind your product as you grow is one of the most difficult things that a company can do, and that's something that we're super, super committed to. And we want to be able to say, hey, it was an accident, or you were doing something you maybe weren't supposed to, but we still have your back. And a lot of people, you know, I'll go to all kinds of trade shows and stuff these days, and someone that's never heard of us before will come up and say, well, hey, you know, why does your knife cost $250, $300, $350 even? Why should I buy that knife versus the, you know, whoever else sitting right next to us, the
replaceable blades,
or the Gerber or the Kershaw or the whoever else? You know, why should I make that investment? And maybe there is other stuff out there that works just as good. I don't know. I personally am biased. As a knife nerd, I think that our knives for hunting are some of the best ones out there, far and away. But part of the reason that those things are expensive is because of this experience that we provide, which is the Generations program. It's really is an investment for life, because short of you losing it, there's pretty much nothing that we won't fix or replace. So you're buying that service for life as a part of the purchase of that knife. So I think that value is something that a lot of people don't grasp right away, but as they start to own these things and send them in, that's where we start to see people being really hardcore repeat customers and really getting invested in our brand once they realize what kind of customer support they get from Jess and Tori upstairs, and what level of care they get when they send their knives in. And that's really what we want MKC to be and continue to be as we grow really big. That will stay very, very important to us.
Exactly. And I'll just say, guys, too, like here's a couple other things that highlight for me, because I get that question, why not Cold Steel or Kershaw or whatever, I could buy this knife for XYZ thing. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Here's my answer. But if you still want to rebuttal that, then maybe MKC is not for you. And that's cool too. Like there's nothing wrong with, that's why there's so many options out there. But I will say that knowing the people and having the experiences that I've had with the company, even before they were a partner of the show, that's why I chose to, partner up with MKC, was just because the quality and the people. And I mean, it's a US company. The growth is there. Again, it's not the big hat, no cattle mentality. For people that don't understand that, go look it up. Josh really does build off of foundations. He's not just throwing money and marketing out there for fun. I think we're just barely starting to get TV ads. So, I mean, that's, it didn't start with that. It started with word of mouth and very Instagram, people sharing it, that kind of deal. But also the fact that he'll post other knife makers' work, obviously not on the MKC page, but Josh himself will post other knife makers' work. That tells me right there, one, he's not scared of people taking pieces of the pie that he owns of the knife world. And it also just speaks volumes to who he is as a person, that he can recognize quality and wants to share that and get that out there as well. Another thing too, this right here, it doesn't say their brand on it. If it'll stop looking at my face here and focus, there we go. So this leather sheath here is made by a local company that you guys highly support and recommend for your leather needs. And so you support other companies as well. You're not just trying to bring everything in to where it's just MKC and only MKC. I mean, you bring in a community, you build a community. And if you want to be a part of that community, there's many opportunities for that. And you've got the Blood Brothers program. You've got, just about everyone cuts their finger with an MKC knife at some point. And then on top of that, even if you're not huge into hunting, maybe you just want one hunting knife. You don't want to be like me, where I've got all of those and all of those.
It's blurry in the background, but you got the whole board back there, don't you?
Yeah, so I've got this lined up here on the wall, and then I've got the MKC magnetic board there. Those are all the ones that I genuinely hunt with. Those are more the lightweight ones, the paracord knives. But even if you just want one hunting knife, kitchen knives, guys, like I've got the Santoku, and that thing, I've put it through, at this point, I don't know how many vegetables and mule deer and elk and all that. And it's still, yesterday I was grilling and my mom was like, wow, like that knife is just going through that steak like butter. And I was like, well, I can promise you this isn't the nicest steak. I mean, it's a game steak, so it's a little bit tough, but it's just slicing through it like nothing. And I've been using the crap out of that thing. So even if you're not huge into all the hunting knives, maybe you want some kitchen stuff, there's the knives. And by the time this podcast comes out, there's going to be more kitchen knives than what we currently have. And there's just some amazing opportunities to be able to use MKC from literally from field to table, from first blood to what's the saying, from first blood
to last is the Yep.
Exactly. From first blood to last bite. So definitely, I can't recommend it enough. And then for the people again like Tristan, young kids that are learning a trade, working up through the company, starting from I'd say the bottom. Maybe there's not the bottom, but I'd say sharpening knives and being stuck in there with all the carbon flying everywhere. I'd say that's kind of the bottom dirty job, and working yourself up through management. That also speaks to the company. You know, you learn the job, you're willing to get your hands dirty. You don't just come in and say, well, I'm this and I can do that for you guys. You know, it's working your way up. So all of those things are why MKC for me. But, you know.
Yep. I appreciate all that. You touch on all those things. I think you're absolutely right there. And yeah, the difference between us and other options out there, just from my perspective, really the quality of the people behind the brand. I mean, that's why I love working here, and I really do think that's what separates us. Is just the caliber of people we have in this building, younger and older, and then also just how much everyone here cares about what we send out the door. It's really exceptional. So I really do stand behind that statement that everyone on the other side of this door working out here in the shop, it's just the best crew I could possibly imagine. And I think you're right about it being very similar to First Phorm, and we actually take a lot of inspiration from you guys. And you know, that whole crew over there is just so awesome in the way they operate. A lot of people, I don't even think really know the level of detail that and professionalism that they hold themselves to, but that's absolutely amazing to witness also. I mean, that facility is freaking spotless, and those guys are so professional and so cool, and also really young and driven, and it's just awesome to be around. And we try to surround ourselves with people like that and emulate that as much as we possibly can. Those guys have really paved the way for excellence, I think, and a manufacturing.
Yeah, and the fact that, you know, Andy, and then going back to Josh over at MKC, they want you guys to succeed. It's almost a education in and of itself. It's not a punch the clock kind of job. You're learning, and you personally have learned a ton of different things that you would not have learned in college. You know, I've gone through, and a lot of people don't know, I've gotten my MBA, and I can tell you, it was worth it, obviously, having the degree, but I've learned almost more real life knowledge working with companies like First Phorm, going through the podcast, building that up, working with you know, MKC and a couple of other brands, that I've learned so much there. And I can only imagine what you have learned being at HQ and working your way up. You would not have gotten that education in a classroom. It's just, you just wouldn't have.
And that's ultimately, you know, the reason that I'm still here. You know, obviously I love my job and all the people here are amazing, and I showing up to work every day is awesome. I never have a day where I don't want to be at work, which I think is really important. But being able to learn from Andrew and Brandon and Josh is just an unbelievable opportunity. I mean, Andrew is a book of knowledge, and you know, he was on your podcast. If anyone hasn't listened to that podcast, I'd highly recommend going and listening to his episode with you, and then also his episode that he did with Josh on the Josh Smith show. He goes a little bit deeper into his story, but man, that guy is something else, and it's really awesome to work underneath people like that. So
oh yeah, exactly. So with that being said, is there anything that we haven't hit on, either your story or with MKC, that you'd like to touch on before we wrap this up?
Trying to think. I don't think so. We'll be at a bunch of the TACs coming up here soon, so definitely come see us. If you're going to be in, I think they're at Michigan right now. Yeah, there's a couple people out right now, and then we're going to Big Sky this weekend. So if you're going to be at Big Sky TAC, come see us. Fling a couple arrows with us up there, and then we'll be in Colorado as well. I forget what resort that's at, but come see us at shows. It's a really great opportunity to get your hands on knives and see stuff and talk to us in person and learn a little bit more about us and have some fun at those things. So
are you going to be at the Utah one?
I'm going to be at the Utah one.
Sweet.
Yep. So we got Big Sky, Utah, Colorado. I missed Utah, but I will be at that one. So
yeah,
you're going to be there, come say hi for sure.
Awesome. And bring your little tiny, like, I forgot what those knives are called, but the old grandpa knives, the old timers.
Oh, the
They're
little,
like this big.
the minis.
Case knives. That's
Oh,
what it
yeah.
is. Yes. Bring a little case knife. Tristan will get it sharper than your grandpa had it. So
I sharpened so many of those damn things. Like, I couldn't tell you, we were at Western Hunt, and I probably sharpened 200 of those things that weekend. Just crazy.
And I'll just say it, guys, bring your serrated blades. Those are Tristan's favorite to sharpen.
I'm a professional serration remover.
That, and then when's the katana dropping?
Oh,
A katana
I would
and an
love to know
axe.
as well. Yeah, the katana is my personal request. I've been testing some options out there, so that's
The
a
professional fruit ninja. That's what you the real life fruit ninja.
Yeah, that's my preferred grizzly bear defense weapon is the katana.
Might work better than a 10
maybe
millimeter,
someday.
honestly.
You got to sell that
Yeah.
one to Brent.
Yeah, just like call him in, call the grizzly in and then step aside and just whop his head off with it. There you go.
Yeah.
That's Tristan's new way of hunting grizzlies. Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Tristan. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
You can email me. My email is tristan@montanaknifecompany.com, and then I'm also on Instagram, so if you want to reach out or give me a follow there, it's Tristan Richter 02 on Instagram, not on Facebook or anything like that. But yeah, those are kind of the socials that I use. And then past that, just hit up Montana Knife Company on all the platforms. I'm on some of that stuff, not a ton. Brett does a really great job with all the Instagram and stuff like that there, but I do got
awesome.
my own.
Okay. Well, I will leave all the links down below, guys. Definitely go check out Tristan's work, what he's got going on. If you've got an MKC knife, go send it in and get it resharpened before season so you can beat the rush, because I know I still need to send some in. I'll probably just bring them to TAC, to be honest with you. But I've got a couple of my favorites that have been used a little too much to be able to skin out an animal this fall. So with that being said, thanks so much for coming again, Tristan. Guys, go check out Montana Knife Company. There are blades that are in stock, so if you're looking for that last minute gift for whoever it may be, definitely go check that out. And then, of course, get into the text drops, because there's a lot of secret text drops that happen, and get in on the email so that you can get notified when there's a new drop or what the new drop is coming up. So go check all those things out. The links are down below, guys. Hope you have a fantastic day. And like I always say, get out, live your life, and love it. All right, guys, that was a fantastic conversation. Tristan is an amazing individual. He's so young, but also has tons of knowledge and experience, obviously being the first employee at Montana Knife Company, working his way up and learning the business, loving knives, sharpening thousands of knives. On top of that, getting out and actually enjoying hunting. He's not just someone that talks about it. He gets out and gets after it. So go check out what Montana Knife Company and Tristan have to offer. I'm going to leave their links down below so you can find them. Also, guys, the $5,000 hunt package giveaway includes a Blackfoot 2.0 in Magna Cut. One of my favorite blades from Montana Knife Company. Go check out the link down below and get entered, guys. Get entered into this giveaway. It's the biggest one to date. I want to give back to the partners, and the partners want to give back to you. So as that is being said, also a shout out to Phorm and Phorm Outdoors. Go check out Phorm with the link down below. Every dollar that you spend on Phorm and Phorm Outdoors over this next 2 days, today and tomorrow, will get you bonus entries into the $5,000 hunt gear package giveaway. Thanks so much for everything that you guys do. Subscribe to the channel if you like this video. Drop a comment with any questions you may have. Let me know what's going on, what you have, maybe your hunts, maybe the knife from Montana Knife Company that you prefer. All of the questions that you've got, guys, all the comments, all the stuff. I want to hear from you. I love the community. I want to see us continue to grow together. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.